And they will be facilitating the webinar today, and I will keep an eye on the chat and let you know when things come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. So my name is Beth Boland. So glad to see you here today for our presentation. I am the Assistant Director of the Tribal Rehab Institute. McKenzie.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is McKenzie Tham. I am the participant coordinator for the TVR Institute at Northwest Indian College.
So today we're hoping to have a lot of discussion actually, but the learning outcomes is to think about strategies to retain TVR staff and then identify the qualities of effective and successful teams, and then finally identify professional development opportunities for TVR.
And here we do have a poll that will show up on your screen. This should be very quick. We just kind of want to gauge how long have you all been with your programs and some of the issues you may be experiencing with staff retention and turnover in your program. So please answer the poll that's up and we can discuss the results.
Okay, looks like we have almost everyone answering questions. I'll give a few more seconds to this.
This is great. It looks like everybody is about 50-50 with staff turnover. So I hope to hear from especially those of you later in our discussions that don't have a problem with staff turnover. We definitely want to hear some strategies that you guys are using.
Yep, and a good mix of people. So, you know, across some less than a year, some 1 to 2, and then 50% 5 years or more. So that's great because that will really help in our discussion. And then, we'll talk about the staff development plans later, but that's good to see that, good chunk, 3/4 of you almost have a staff development plan. So that's great.
So today we're going to be covering 3 main topics with, as Beth said, lots of opportunity for discussion among everybody here. The 3 topics are: why do staff stay in or leave a job, some strategies for retaining staff, and professional development options that may contribute to staff retention.
So I think we might have another poll.
Yes.
So before we get into this discussion, we just wanted to, talk about, of the jobs you've had, which one was your favorite? And you can, give us as long of an answer as you want on that one. And then what characteristics of that job did you like?
Ava, I don't see a place where these can be answered.
Yeah, I don't either.
Rebecca, I think this may be because you are co-host. I can un-co-host you.
I'm not a co-host. So.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing anything to answer either.
Let me see.
So maybe we can just switch it to live discussion or chat room. So if anyone would like to share any of the information here, so of the jobs you've had, which one was your favorite and what characteristics of that job did you like? So either raise your hand, or it looks like Ava did a quick new poll.
Sorry.
So you can go ahead and submit that in the poll.
Or in the chat too, if you wish.
Or in the chat, yeah.
And of course, raising your hand and speaking is always welcome too. We do love discussion.
Well, this is Keith. I think I would probably rather answer just by talking, if that's okay.
Please do. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so from my personal perspective, the two jobs I've enjoyed equally, more than any other. One was as a Social Security benefits planner, and the other was in teaching. And in both of those jobs, I think the thing that really, I guess, sort of anchored me to those jobs was that it allowed me to be in a position to share just anything I knew with the person that I thought was going to help them. It allowed me to put information into their hands that I thought would just help them at critical times, or maybe just share knowledge that they didn't have at the time that could help them. That's kind of the core of who I am. So I guess that kind of speaks to what characteristics of those jobs that really appealed to me. And that's still the same today.
Thanks, Keith. Ava, how are we doing on participation in the poll?
There are 8 answers. I think we can go ahead and take a look. 9 answers now. And it may just be a while because these are long answered questions. Maybe some people don't have the answer or experience. We're getting more in though. There's 11
Okay.
now.
Well, we can wait for another minute or two.
Maybe do any of the presenters have any jobs?
Yeah, and this is going to sound, this is Beth, this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but I like my job as the assistant director of the Tribal Folk Rehab Institute. It's been a very interesting experience. When I was a state VR counselor, I did not work in a state that had a tribal VR program. And so I wasn't really exposed to the great work that you guys do until I came to Washington State and worked with August when we had the Oyate program here. And just, the reach out when we first started the Institute, I think 7 years ago or whenever we started. And it's just been really fun to get to know the work that the TVR programs do. Because I keep telling my state partners that, you guys get to do really fun stuff that we couldn't do as a state VR counselor. And so I think that's just nice. And I love working with McKenzie and Laura. So that's another good characteristic of the job.
Thanks, Beth. All right, are we able to see some of the answers?
Yes, I will share the results now. I'm unsure if everyone will be able to see it live through this window. So I can go ahead and share another window. Let me see really quick here.
McKenzie, do you have an answer for the question?
Yes, and I'll focus, I guess, more on the characteristics of the job that I like, which is also my current position as a participant coordinator. I love, it's really important that my team is supportive. We're all here for each other. We can all count on each other. There really is a team environment. We understand if, family things are happening, we're all very flexible and very accommodating. I think those are really important. And you don't often find that in positions outside of, tribal programs or tribal communities. So I think that's one thing that really, it's shared values with me personally and with the work that we're doing.
Great. So we can just look at some of the answers in the poll. So Voc Rehab Counselor has been my favorite because of the interaction I have with people. Tribal Voc Rehab, lifeguard. That'd be a fun. If I had to choose my second favorite job, it would probably be teaching sailing, you know, in the summer. So it's kind of close to lifeguard. Voc Rehab, working as an educator for a nonprofit organization. Tribal Health Center as a referral specialist. Social services, HR position, farmers market. That would be fun. Someone has had several positions that involve direct advocacy and education, and those types of jobs are their favorite. Tribal VR, and so far Tribal VR, great. And so characteristics, because this is often, you know, what we want to find out from our customers about as well when we're trying to figure out what they want to do, but also just figuring out from staff what is the thing that they like in their job, so you can try to nourish that for them to, you know, maintain and retain that staff. So hands-on with interacting with clients and seeing them reach their goals and become successful. It's very fulfilling. Working with people, hands-on teaching, physical, working with individuals, making an impact, learning the culture, more about the people, working with people, engaging with the community, helping people learn about healthy food, working with kids, leadership and atmosphere, one-on-one change with individuals, again, community and helping them with healthcare needs, being involved with people and other team members to make sure the consumer is enveloped with the services they need and the cultural aspect. Great. So hopefully this will kind of give us some thinking about why we wanted, what our favorite job was and why we stayed. Is there anyone who was not able to enter data in the poll who would like just to speak and share with us your answers? And if so, if you could raise your hand so we can see. I'm not seeing anything. All right. So I think we can move on.
So please feel free to unmute yourself and participate or type in the chat. But from what you see in your community, what are some reasons that people stay in a job? So in the poll results, we saw, you know, people like the work, they care about the mission of the job or the program, and you want to see it done well. That's a great reason to stay in a position. They feel appreciated. Maybe this is from your leadership, your supervisor, your director, or you feel appreciated by your coworkers. The culture is part of the job. That's something that might be unique to your program that you're not going to find in a job anywhere else. If you just generally like your supervisor and coworkers, someone in the poll said that the good leadership and the atmosphere of the job is an important aspect of staying. You're less likely to leave a job if you feel appreciated, supported, and you enjoy being there. A lot of people want to help strengthen their community, and especially working in TVR is a really hands-on way to do that and to make an impact every day. And some other reasons that might apply to any job, you know, if the pay and benefits are comparable, if they're good, if your schedule is flexible, if your team is understanding, and if you overall feel that when you go to work, you're making an impact every day. So some of those are just examples. I'd love to hear, especially those of you that did type in the poll or that weren't able to, please unmute yourself. And I would like to see what happens in your community. Why do people stay in a job?
This is Karen, Northwest Wisconsin, and working with Glitzy Verna. I see people around me. I think one of the things that the tribal members I work with when they're working within the tribe is confidentiality drives some of them away, especially if they're working in health industries or if they're struggling with disabilities, is that they feel like they can't necessarily go into the clinic without someone gossiping about them being there. And so I've seen that that has a lot to do with the communities around me and the struggle to maintain employment. And also, as leadership changes within the tribe, that causes a lot of turnover. So those are some of the struggles I've seen in my community. What I like about my job in Verna is that there's just it's just such a supportive family organization, and I don't think I've actually ever experienced that before, where the family is the thing, and the supports are in place to uplift people in that struggle of maintaining family connections and health. So that's one of the things that I feel keeps people connected.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. And we're gonna the next discussion question will be like, why do people leave a job? So thank you for starting that conversation. But right now, if we can kind of focus on why they stay, and then we'll move to. But that was a great discussion, Karen. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Albert Calamity from New Mexico Navajo Nation Office of Special Ed. I think looking at myself, why do I stay in this job is because I like what I do. I like helping people. I like just, one of our classes was Northwest yesterday. A question came up why I have been in this job this long. And I said, I like to see people succeed. As a VR counselor, watching a person with a disability that says that I can't, or I'm not able to, but when you help them along through guidance and counseling, with informed choices and all these other aspects of VR services, and you see them succeed, and that look of accomplishment, that's the reward that I look for every time I work with an individual in my caseload. So what I would say in this question is because people like what they do. And of course, the money is a good incentive, but I think if that's the only reason that a person is in a job, they're going to have a hard time. So I'm just speaking from my point of view. So that's it.
Thank you so much. In the chat, Mary Maruvia says it is important to have high expectations and feel that your staff can meet them. That's coming from a director's perspective, of course.
This is Susie Calhoun. And from the director's perspective, I also believe that you have to value your staff. And you have to thank them for what they do. Because people are doing their best to make sure when someone comes in, they honor that person and they're respectful. But we also have to honor our staff. If you want to retain people, you have to know that they do bring a value, and you have to value them not just once a year in an evaluation, but daily. Someone does good, you let them know they do good. If you want to have a great staff, you have to really make sure that you're providing them the tools to be a great staff. You let them know if they're falling down, and you help them to get back to where you need them. So I have a phenomenal staff. We've been together for years and years. So I think that it starts with the director putting what their expectations are, as Mary said, but also then making sure that you provide that in a way that is benefiting their need, as well as watching over your program.
Those are some really important points, really important. I appreciate you bringing those up.
I agree, Susie. I think that that's really, really important. And, you know, it doesn't take a lot to just say thank you and I appreciate your work, you know, so.
All right, anyone else want to share? All right, Ava, why don't we go to the next slide then? And Karen got us started thinking about this. So why do you think people leave a job in TVR? So I think, you know, Karen, you shared some really two great reasons. You know, just some confidentiality concerns for either the people working in TVR or the customers coming in. And then that tribal leadership change, because every time there's that leadership change, things may change in your program. You know, is the work too challenging? Are they not getting the support that Susie talked about? You know, and there is a lot to learn. You know, the people that tend to come into these positions in tribal folk rehab may not have a background even in social services, much less rehab counseling. And so getting them to that point, you know, figuring out if the job is a good fit. You know, rehab counseling as a profession has been a best kept secret for over 100 years. And so people often don't know about the work that we do until they stumble into it from various routes. And so it may not be a good fit for them. And so how do you support that as well as, you know, making sure that the ones who it is a good fit for stay in that job, you know, and obviously the people that our staff have families, they have community obligations, you know, those family responsibilities that can be a struggle for all of us thinking about juggling our multiple roles in our communities. And then maybe just a lack of understanding of the job, of the program, of the community, you know, those sorts of things. Maybe some reasons why people leave a job in TVR, but anyone else have other thoughts about what you've seen or heard?
Well, I would have to say my experience really kind of piggybacks on a couple of things that you've already brought up. You know, with leadership change and the whole idea behind having to educate new leadership on the purpose of VR grants and that they are not, in fact, a social program or meant to take the place of the Office of Social Work within the tribe. I've also run into those situations where tribal leadership wants to utilize the program sort of as their own personal placement agency. And what I mean by that is instead of hiring, and you know, we run into this with employers, or at least locally we have, instead of hiring staff, they want to put everyone on a work adjustment plan, whether they have a disability or not. And again, that really goes back to trying to educate leadership on what the parameters of vocational rehabilitation services are and the clientele that we are called to serve, that everyone is not eligible simply because they've had a diagnosis at one time or another. But you know, that seems to be an ongoing fight, especially if you're at a smaller tribe where leadership changes routinely. I think another part of that issue, though, is looking at what type of supports staff have. Again, here locally, we have lots of small tribes that maybe don't provide any kind of retirement or don't provide any kind of medical services. And yes, while we tend to utilize IHS for a lot of services, IHS doesn't cover everything, and certainly not in a timely manner. Again, speaking about our local service providers. But those are things that staff have to consider when they are looking at staying invested in a job that tends to be quite difficult in and of itself.
Yeah,
I see
thanks,
some
Keith.
nods.
Yep, thanks, Keith. Yeah. Anyone else, or Karen, did you want to, I could have said a couple of things that you had said earlier. I don't know if you had additional things for this particular question or.
I think that when I'm looking at what's going on today, one of the problems I have seen since COVID is that it's been difficult for people to go back to the office.
Mhm.
And, that's resulted in a turnover in our office. And so that has changed things somewhat.
Mhm.
And I think we do have to talk about that a little bit within this because, as numbers rise again for the winter months, are we going to have to deal with that again? Or,
Mhm. Right. So the
what
struggle of,
I see. Yeah.
right. Go ahead. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. What I've seen like in our program is that we really enjoy working with each other, even though we're all at a distance. For the most part, we're several hours away from each other. And I think that's true of a lot of VR programs. But finding and maintaining we have that now. And now that we have it, when I look at what it was like in the past, I'm like, wow, no, this is really huge. And so that's the other thing that I see that helps or hurts
Mhm.
maintaining employment.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and just that struggle of what our new normal is going to look like, both on the client side. So I know at least anecdotally, from what I've heard, some customers don't want to come in either because of distance or whatever disability reasons, and then counselors as well wanting to work remotely part of the time. And so it's going to be an interesting um, thing as we try to support staff and also support our programs and do the good work that we do. And yeah, that's so thanks, Karen, for bringing the COVID issue into it as well, because we just don't know. There's just so many unknowns still.
Hey, Beth, this is Rebecca. One of the things that I wanted to bring up that sometimes can be a real barrier in TVR employees staying at their job is when personal life or commitments to traditional things in the community, different roles in the tribal communities, and those kinds of things come up and they begin to interfere with the job. People will consistently choose family, community, those kinds of things, as they should. But a lot of times those things will pull people away from their jobs because of commitment to community or traditional kinds of things, as well as family, and just dealing with personal life. I don't know that I've ever been in a job where I have seen so much pressure and stress on people and communities than in TVR, because in addition to the job in TVR, the community commitment, the family commitment, all of the things that are going on, that stress and pressure begins to be too much, especially if the work environment isn't flexible and sensitive to that.
Right, thanks. And Adrian put in the chat, I think that people leave a job. Oops, I moved, sorry. I think that people leave a job in TVR because they feel like they're not valued or appreciated, and or they don't fully realize what is required of them in order to be effective in their role. Yeah, thank you. And then Jamie put in, personally, when I was a brand new VR counselor out of school, I felt overwhelmed by my caseload and lack of understanding of office procedures, practices, etc. If I had someone who walked me through processes, etc., it would have helped me with work stress. Thanks, Jamie. And then Susie put in the chat, some leave when they find it is not social services crisis-based services, so not a quick fix. Topped with the documentation needed to perform the job and found they had to do the duties of the job themselves. Yep. So again, just kind of not understanding the work that we do. And it's hard to explain the work that we do until you start doing it, oftentimes. Yeah. Anyone else have other thoughts about why people leave a job in tribal voc rehab?
Well, I don't think we can overstate kind of the economic weight. I mean, the cost of gas, if you're in a position like our positions here in Oklahoma are, I guess, are kind of like Texas and Alaska. I mean, we don't travel quite as much as they do, but my personal caseload right now, I serve 3 different counties, and the other 2 counties I serve are 2 hours one way in opposite directions. And I don't have an agency car to utilize for that. So I have to use my own vehicle and kind of get reimbursed for gas. But of course, that doesn't even come close to taking care of wear and tear on tires and so forth and so on. You know, those are things that have to be considered. The price of groceries, the price of maintaining your vehicles. You know, even where in my state job, the position certainly has some benefits to it, but like most state positions, there's not a lot of flexibility when it comes to increase in pay or anything like that. And I know in our state, in the state of Oklahoma, we have probably 30 counselor positions open statewide right now. And certainly that impacts the level of work and the quality of work that the remaining counselors are left to do.
Yep, thanks, Keith. Anyone
This
else?
is Susie
Sarah?
again.
Yep,
Oh,
Susie, go
sorry,
ahead.
Beth.
Nope, go ahead.
And I think because we all know the elephant in the room, we lose people. Fortunately, I have a staff that has weathered with me during the grant competition.
Right.
People need to know that they have a job
Yes.
and people need to be secure. I would never take the competition out because I never want to lose discretionary funding. We couldn't survive on formula funds and do the work that we do in our communities.
Right.
So there's that as well. I know a lot of my peers have lost staff because of the grant competition, because people need to know that they're going to be secure in their employment. So I think that drives a lot of changes in programs.
Yep.
We all just kind of laugh and say, I guess we'll see each other in the cheese line if we don't get the grant. But really, it takes that dedication of your staff, and for us as directors to let staff know when they're hired, this is a 5-year program. And we always will work in the light that we're going to work our hardest to get the grant refunded, but we cannot make that promise for past the 5 years. So I think we lose people because of that.
Yep. And as you were speaking, Janine put in the chat the same, very similar. So Janine in the chat said the competitive 5-year grant, just like you were talking, Susie. As a single parent, it is a little stressful at the end of the grant. Even though I feel strongly that our work is needed and we're able to meet our goals, waiting until September to find out if you have a job in October is still stressful.
Right.
Yeah.
So Keith brought up a really good point about flexibility. And I think that COVID is forcing employers to become more flexible because just because of the situation that everyone is in. And so when you have an organization that's very rigid, where you have to be in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning and work until 5 with a 1-hour lunch from noon to 1 every day, Monday through Friday, and there's no flexibility there because there's so many other options now.
Right.
People are going over to other organizations that have more flexibility.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah, I really appreciate that comment, because the more flexible we can be as employers, I think the more we will retain staff, and staff, my staff really appreciate flexibility in our workplace now.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah.
Well, And I want to add to that and just say that it's becoming overtly obvious how many other entities are recognizing the viability of that flexibility. I mean, you have so many programs. I mean, here locally, the Department of Human Services, they literally shut down their whole office, and our local office was covering several counties, and all of those employees for DHS are still working from home. And that hasn't been an option for the Department of Rehabilitation Services state office for us for a long time. So again, just like you said, it's not enough, or it's not enough to just mention that we know that there are some flexibility options. There are other programs showing that it not only works, but it works well. They're still able to not only provide the essential functions of their job, but do it in a way that helps them, that makes them feel comfortable as employees, and that helps them be more effective.
Yeah. And this is kind of getting into our next slide. So if we could transition to that, and then I'll share what Amanda put in the chat.
Okay.
So she just stated, I know I need to do better at thanking staff more often, but she finally got pay levels to compensate staff based on their education field. So McKenzie, do you want to lead this one?
Yes. So now that we have some idea of some reasons that people leave a job in TVR, let's consider some strategies that you use to retain staff. So we do have another poll here. Ava, if you want to put that up, and everyone can type your answers, but please also feel free to unmute yourself and chime in anytime. But I just would like to hear, what strategies are you using? And then a follow-up question, which of these are most effective so far?
So Ava, it doesn't look like there's a text box.
This time it may actually be because I made you a co-host.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah. If anyone
Nope,
is
that's
having
fine.
issues though, send me in the chat, please, and I'll restart it.
And please feel free to unmute yourself anytime. We love a verbal discussion.
And also feel free to put in things that we've already talked about. So flexibility, pay, you know.
Well, for example, I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot. You don't have to chime in verbally, but Amanda said, you know, you discussed that you were able to raise pay levels. I want to, like, how has that, was that a large hurdle to fight for? How has it been since you've implemented that? I'd love to hear from you if you're able.
Hi, it was a matter of looking at the budget, actually having new eyes, a new supervisor, a new department director, look at staff who's been here for a considerable amount of years, and looking at what they're only a level 3, they should be a level 4, and adjusting the job description, going through HR, revising the budget, and made it happen. But I felt really bad that it took over 20 years to see the level change. You know, we've all gotten our raises every annual year, approved by the executive board, but it was never looked at as far as a professional level, you know, are they just one step above a program assistant, or should they be 2 steps above a program assistant based on their education, knowledge? And I did lose a staff to a wellness prevention program that was able to pay them $2 more an hour. So, I mean, it was a small window. But and this was right, if I would have known COVID was going to hit and we were going to have all that carryover, I could have, you know, kept that staff and adjusted the budget accordingly, because, you know, I could have moved travel funds into salaries and then just made it happen. And we just did it. Thanks.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And just the way that you phrased your answer and the effort that you put in also, you know, it just shows the importance of having a supportive, dedicated leadership who wants the best for their staff and wants to be able to support them in the ways that they need. So thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
This is Susie, and I think that my biggest strategy is transparency. So my staff they understand the whole workings of our program, from my position to their positions. I try to keep them knowledgeable about changes that are happening. They come in on our director's call with RSA where they can hear. We provide them professional development. I try to push them harder than they want at times to step up and do other pieces. So I will, in their yearly evaluation, say, in the next year, I need you to learn the administrative ways of certain different pieces, because none of us are promised tomorrow. And so I think it's really important that your staff know your program as well as you do. I don't fear the fact that I know that some people think, well, if my staff knows what I'm doing, you know, they could easily replace me. And I think that's a thought that you guys should really think that is important. And they should be able to replace you because that's professional development. And when you write your grants every 5 years in the competition, if you need to look at what the job descriptions look like there and do a revision, because in 5 years, if you've retained your staff, their duties have changed and they need to be compensated for that. So I like that we're able to do that in that 5-year look. There's a lot of things, because we are a tribal organization, we have to follow the different protocols, and that's all right as well. But I want my staff to be very well-rounded in understanding our program as well as the organization, so that they can represent us anywhere they go. It seems to work with me. I've retained our staff. We had one retire, and I had one, like I said earlier, that when they found out really what our job was and the work it was, they were gone. And being flexible. If my staff need to be somewhere, they can be there. You know, we're a family. And we need to make sure that we honor all of those. Family, I always say, comes first. I have to honor what they have going on in their life. So we look at the holistic staff look as well as same as we would do with our clients.
Yeah. Thanks, Susie. And I think, you know, your point about that, you know, making sure the staff kind of know everything or know as much as they can and their different roles and what you do can also support you. So we've been focusing a lot on retention of staff, but we need to think maybe about retaining directors as well. And so I think, you know, if you have staff who understand what you're doing, hopefully that's more supportive for you, and they're, you know, supporting you in that role and not questioning why you're asking them for certain things, or are able to step in if you have to step away for a period of time for your own family issues or community roles or whatever's going on. And Sheila put in the chat, I agree with you, Miss Susie. I feel like everyone should know what everyone else does, because we are a small office and when one is out, the other one of us picks up for them. Yep. Thank you, Sheila. Ava, are we ready to share the poll? It looks like it's been 15 people for a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
I will go ahead and share those. Can everyone see this?
Yes, thank you so much. So let's see, regular ongoing trainings. Oh, wow, this is great. Optional 30-hour work weeks, flexibility in allowing staff to adjust schedules and work from home, and nominating staff for employee team of the quarter for a job well done. That's something we haven't really talked too much about yet, is that really appreciation and having programs in place to really demonstrate your appreciation for staff. That's wonderful. Interact with staff often, let them know they're an important part of the team, talk to them about cases and what is going on with the person and what each consumer needs. We're all different and offer different ideas. Bringing those together only benefit the clients we serve. Also food and often. Love that. Absolutely. Try to offer the best pay rate as possible and offer training and professional development opportunities. Great. Offer staff development, flexibility, appreciation, professional development, remote working 1 day a week. That's great. Ability to participate more in cultural events for their own needs. Wellness, time off, flexible work hours. Nothing. All right. Well, I hope that you get some ideas here today in this webinar. Flexible schedules, increasing income, appreciation, team building. That's something we'll touch on a little bit later too. That is a very important aspect that really contributes to the overall mission and atmosphere of the workplace, for sure. Being passionate with the type of work we do. Otherwise, people don't last in this employment. Absolutely. TVR is a very tough field, and it requires a lot of empathy, consistent empathy and compassion, not only for your clients, for your consumers, but for each other. Pay increase, program transparency, marvelous, just like Susie talked about. My program manager has always been transparent with what is going on in the program. Even though many changes have happened in my 10 years, there are very few surprises. She's open to discussing how changes affect the program and participants and us staff also. Flexibility, competitive pay and flexibility. Well, there's some kind of theme here today, isn't there? Thank you guys so much for sharing this. So with all of those wonderful suggestions in mind, we are now going to go over some other strategies that might be useful in your programs as well. These are some suggested strategies, but of course, raise your hand, put it in the chat box, please chime in wherever you feel. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks, McKenzie. So just kind of, I think we heard some of this, but just to go over just some suggested strategies that we have heard from other people as we're doing this work, or some resources that we have. The first one is that timely orientation and onboarding process. And so, I think some of you have talked about that, of how much time it takes, and hopefully we can onboard our new staff, completing those, from completing the HR forms, learning about benefits and work hours, getting keys or computer, to more of the process of the work that they actually have to do. And really, if we think about this onboarding, it's a process of welcoming a new employee or new staff into the program and providing them with the tools to excel. And so I think part of this is just to obviously get to know that staff person, take the time to figure out what they might need in that job. So it could include training. And so I know it's really great when we have new staff in our TVR classes, because they're starting on that track of understanding the profession, but really setting goals. So really, we'll talk about this with those development plans, but everybody has different goals, different needs when they come in, based on their background, based on their understanding. And so setting those individual goals, kind of like we do with the clients that we work with. Have them read the grant, do some of that legwork to understand your program, understand the services that you can offer, sitting in on participant meetings. And so pairing them with either you during meetings as a director, or pairing them with a seasoned counselor, VRC, and then bringing them around, helping them with outreach. And so sometimes, we saw that in what kept you guys in a job is that community, and making sure that if they don't understand how the TVR program connects with community, bringing them and helping them with outreach. Anyone else have other thoughts, or what you guys do with onboarding that has helped?
I think
Okay.
you've really
go ahead,
hit
Keith.
on a lot of the key components. I think the only thing that I would personally add is just to be cognizant of what pace that
Yes,
individual is
right.
able to. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Keith.
Just being aware of what pace the individual is able to ingest all of the onslaught of information as a person, especially someone who's very new to vocational rehabilitation and kind of understanding the different nuances and timelines that apply to what we do, and how to battle or how to answer to leadership who may not just basically agree with what you're telling them, even though what you're telling them is according to federal regulations or policy.
Right. Right. And some, some staff want to just jump in and just get started right away. And that's the way that they learn best.
Right.
Some other people want to read the grant, kind of watch a lot, read a lot, and feel prepared before, jumping into it. So I think that individualized nature can really help. And so I think it's good to have a kind of an outline or a process that all staff go through onboarding, but within that be flexible, kind of like what we've been talking about, and making sure that it meets the needs of that person. Great. So the second bullet here, positive supportive leadership. So we've talked about this as well. And so this is not only the TVR director, but then I think all the leadership above. So whichever department the program is in, as well as tribal leadership, but kind of thinking about at least the TVR director, since some of you are directors and have this, can control this. So making sure that leadership is approachable, trustworthy, consistent. I liked how a lot of you talked about being transparent. And so that goes a long way, that, here's who I am, here's the program, you can ask me anything, sort of an approach. And leadership that honors culture and traditional practices. And so I think that gets into how you run your program, but it also, I think, relates a lot to the flexibility that you show your staff, the understanding that you show your staff as they're coming in and as you're retaining those individuals. Thinking about self-care. And so, I am probably the worst person around this. I can teach my students about self-care, but I tell them not to watch what I do, which is not a good way to do it. And so, if leadership can model good, kind, empathetic self-care, that goes a long way, because that gives permission then for the staff to be able to do that as well. So sometimes, we say you need to go do self-care, and they're not seeing us do it either. And so then they might question, well, can I really do it? Because they're not doing it. And so thinking about that. So, what do you do for self-care around this? And then model that to your staff. Understanding TVR and its requirements. And so the more that you can speak fluently about your own grant, and this is sometimes hard because sometimes staff are coming in with a new director. And so, creating that supportive environment where you all might be trying to understand TVR at the same time. And then obviously integrating culture into your program. And so again, the way that you talk with staff, the way that you interact with them, as well as the participants in the program. And think about hospitality practices. And so someone mentioned food, and a lot of food. So, sometimes that's that hospitality practice, and not that you want your, staff to gain a lot of weight in your program or something. But thinking about that, sometimes just bringing in donuts once in a while goes a long way, or whatever your staff, likes to do kind of goes a long way with that.
Right.
Yeah, using those cultural practices or stories to structure the program. You all have great stories about why you came into VR, narratives from your own life, narratives from the participants that you work with, and then honoring those seasonal traditions. And so that can kind of go hand in hand with the hospitality practices and the cultural practices. And yeah, Karen put in the chat, like plants, people need to have sunshine and be fed and water to thrive. Great. Yeah, I work in a different organization part-time that we have little teams, and one of the teams is the zoo team, and it's the care and feeding of the staff. And so there's a dedicated group of people who make sure that pre-COVID, at least, we had goodies at our staff meetings, and that people were thanked, and the refrigerator got cleaned out, and some of those things that can go a long way. So any other thoughts about positive supportive leadership, what you guys have done or have seen? Oh, Keith, you're muted if you're talking to us. Oh, he might not be.
Okay, so I love everything that you've brought up, and I would even add that that if a program maybe doesn't have access to or the ability to add in that cultural aspect of supporting staff, create opportunities for the staff maybe once a quarter to just have a staff building activity. Here recently, I have a pottery studio, which is kind of a thing I do on the side. And one of my goals is always at least once a year to take my pottery wheel to the office and kind of have a staff building day where people just kind of play in the clay and kind of get some exposure to that, and just finding different ways to not just try to address their emotional well-being, but have staff laugh. I think laughter is such a healing process.
Yeah.
And that sometimes because of the weightiness of what we do, it's just important to let staff know that it's okay to do that. Like you were talking about wellness, if we're not promoting it in positions of leadership, then staff are most certainly not going to try to address it. At least that's been my experience.
Right. So that's a really good segue into kind of our next question here about, how do you bring culture into your work environment? Any thoughts about that?
This one we need some people to chime in from all over the country, because I know all of you in your unique tribal programs have different cultural practices that you could integrate at work. So I'd love to hear what you guys are doing in your areas.
This is Janine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I work with tribal vocational rehabilitation and for the Confederated Tribes, the Umatilla Indian Reservation. Susie Calhoun is my supervisor. As if you couldn't tell by our responses, we have a program that we implemented with TVR called Finding Your Inner Balance. And we work with clients with cultural activities. We teach classes. We coordinate with our local tribal museum and with elders and the education program to offer little small cultural classes that vary. We've done moccasins, we've done shawls, we've done root diggers, we've done necklaces and beadwork and chokers and things like that have brought us together as tribal members, giving activities that at a glance would seem insignificant, but it offers a cultural piece, a time of gathering, and those things we find are important for our clients and for ourselves. And then also, Susie sometimes offers a mental health day where we can do small projects in the office, like make necklaces and things like that, that we offer out as, sometimes we do workshops with the local governmental groups that we can offer those necklaces as part of our program to see where we come from and what we do.
Great, thanks, Janine. In the chat, Sheila shared we have a lot of the local artwork in our office. Great. So from baskets to pottery, paintings, pictures, and carvings. So that's really nice. We decorate our offices to suit our style, and all of us have handmade items in them. Great. Thank you for sharing.
I was thinking sometimes even just the name of the program, if the name of the TVR program is in the language, or if the name of the TVR program reflects tribal symbols, though that's something kind of small that can make participants feel welcome and connected to the program and to the community as well.
Yep, thanks. Anyone else want to share about the culture that you bring into your program?
Morning, this is
All
Otter.
right. Hi, Otter.
Hi. Well, Ramona Medicine Horse is our director, and she keeps us very engaged with cultural activities such as I'm making my own moccasins from scratch right now. Not a very good beater. Stabbed myself with a few times with a needle. But we partake in a lot of the community events, parade of lights for Christmas. We stand outside, decorate our vehicles, and freeze. But it's a big team building effort. There's not one boss. Everybody's the boss and they tell me what to do. So it works out that way. But I think just having a good understanding of each individual's struggles. She knows that every one of us on our team has a life outside of VR. And so the life we have here together is controlled by her guidance and counseling. And when she's out of whack, everybody's out of whack because we've worked together. I've worked with Ramona for over almost 9 years now.
Yeah.
So, and I think that self-care is easier said than done. I think if directors would implicate more meditation, more even this, readings from Ram Dass, Tai Chi, things, breathing exercises that you practice in the office together that kind of breaks down some of those barriers or ice that you have with new hires, old hires. And even just because the director has to fight with finance, with council, with the organization that we function within, that if the rest of the staff kind of understood some of those battles, it makes working together so much easier.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Otter. So kind of, we talk about the TVR programs being connected to the community, but then actually doing that as a staff, right? It sounds like going out and participating in those activities as a TVR staff together. So that can be pretty powerful. Thank you. So if we think about teams too, and so this is, just creating that strong team goes a long way. And I think, we talked about that a lot today about the coworkers you work with, the directors that you might look up to, or, really value their role in the organization, but everyone has a place within the TVR teams. And so hopefully through the activities you're doing, starting with that onboarding, but then throughout of having opportunities for staff members to get to know each other. And so hopefully you've thought about that, how to bring in people's skills. I like, Sheila, that you talked about everyone has some homemade art work in there, or handmade items in their office, so that can kind of bring in a little bit of themselves into that, whether it's something that they have handmade or a family member, or just something that spoke to them, depending upon their craft level. Organizing the team based on each person's strengths and skills. And so this is part of getting to know your staff, is to figuring out, who might be more skilled in something and can they do more of that work where someone else has a strength in a different area. And so really creating that team environment and reviewing the grant goals together. Susie, you talked about being transparent and really making sure that everybody knows what everyone else is doing, which is a part of a good, building that good, strong team. And then figuring out how to support them. And so this goes to some staff development plans that we'll be looking at, but what do those individual staff need and want to work on, and how can you support them as director, but then also for excuse me, for those of you who are not directors, we want to support all team members. And so, in my mind, this doesn't rest just on the director. They are often leading and facilitating and making space for these activities, but as everybody as a team coming together and promoting that self-care, participating in cultural practices and ceremonies. So Otter, you gave us some great examples there. Schedule designated time each week for casework or other practices. And so are there times to present cases, the tough ones that we're working on, to see what other people, have ideas about? Kind of thinking about that. taking time away. And so, Susie's practice of that mental health day, kind of thinking about that as just, sometimes you just need that break, and be okay with that. And then recognizing the signs of burnout in each other. And so again, the director is in a unique position to see that, but I think all the team members sometimes see that a little bit differently in the team. And so making sure that there is that open communication with the director or the leaders to recognize maybe that burnout and get some assistance, get some support before it becomes where someone just leaves the job because of it. So we kind of started this discussion a little bit, but thinking about self-care, what are some cultural practices that you do to take care of yourself? Any ideas or thoughts? Amanda, we do self-care, sharing in food days, rock your mock. Yep, agency asks us to share photos wearing slippers, holiday decorations. Great, thank you. So thinking about self-care, Audrey, you talked about meditation. Amanda said that the agency paid for the Calm app, and Calm app in exclamation points. So I think that Amanda likes the Calm app. So thinking about that. Anyone want to take yourself off mute and talk a little bit more about how you might culturally take care of yourself? Attending tribal ceremonies. Thanks, Tammy.
Hi, this is Amanda.
Hey, Amanda.
We recently had a consumer thank us for all the subsistence equipment that we were able to purchase for them to increase their subsistence activities in their village. And of course, Philip was the counselor, and we had to kind of nicely remind him, hey, you got to share some of that jarfish with the rest of us. So yeah. So just the little things, I think, really help. And, we haven't had that happen in a long time because of what I call stupid COVID.
Right. Yep. Yep. I've often called it that as well, or other words, but yes, thank you. Thanks, Amanda.
I mean, it really psychologically damaged all of us on the most smallest level, just horrible.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Janine in the chat put often work on beadwork or weaving projects during webinar meetings. Great. So we want to see your work at the end of this one if you want to share what you've been working on. Karen shared we always have a cultural component to our staff meetings. Great. And we often have a teacher guiding us through a craft. Nice. Sarah shared we have 2 weeks of subsistence leave in addition to our personal leave every year. Great. Can you talk a little bit more about that, Sarah, what that looks like?
Sure. So in the Bering Strait region of Alaska, subsistence is essential for almost all families. And it's the time of year when we are out in the wilderness gathering greens, berries, roots, hunting, fishing. The price of groceries is so high out here that it's almost impossible to, support your family, even with a good paying job, if you're not participating in subsistence activities. By the time fruits and vegetables get out here, they're almost always at their expiration date or already expired. And so if you want to feed your children healthy, fresh food, you have to participate in subsistence activities, but also it's cultural. It's really important for people's mental health. And the more you're out in the wilderness, I find for myself, the more I'm out there, the better I feel. And so CORC recognizes this, and ever since I began in 2004 we've had subsistence leave.
Mhm.
We can take it in combination with personal leave, or we can take it as personal leave. We don't necessarily have to be doing subsistence activities, but most employees use this time for subsistence activities. So yeah, it's a way that Quirk recognizes the importance to retain employees, but also to promote our well-being.
Yep, thanks, Sarah. Rachel shared a really interesting idea. So Rachel said, I know of a tribe that allows for 40 hours of leave per year to participate in cultural activities and is not charged to their annual leave. And so she wishes more would do that. So it's a great example. Tammy shared, we also have cultural activities during our annual retreat. And thanks, Lyle, he had to drop off. Off-site meetings, and so kind of getting out. Great. So kind of thinking about some of these things can lead to some responsive professional development and staff development plans. And so if we think about those staff development plans, I think, is this where we have another poll question?
Yes, we do.
I actually don't have a
Oh,
poll
okay.
for this. I'm sorry.
Okay. No,
Okay.
that's fine. That's all right. So kind of thinking about those staff development plans, does anyone want to share some of the things that they put in? You know, what types of activities you include in those staff development plans?
This is Keith. Some of the things we've done are just based on fun, but everything we decide to do really has to be done as a group. Some of those examples would be, we've done everything from a paintball retreat to a one of the rooms where you as a group have to figure out how to get out of. And
escape room.
Of course, we've also done things as simple as a meet and greet to have lunch at maybe one of the state facilities next to a lake somewhere, where we would meet and staff some cases and then just kind of spend the rest of the day basically hanging out. Because overall, I mean, the goal is for us to spend time together, but also spend time relaxing, spend time laughing, and just kind of remembering who we are as a person and regenerating ourselves so that we can go back into the workforce and give our best.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else have other thoughts about what you include as activities in these staff development plans? All right, why don't we move on to the next slide then? Thank you.
Well, some things you may consider adding to your staff development plans are, of course, opportunities for professional development. So we've talked a little bit about, responsive leadership, being there to support your staff and setting goals for your staff, or your staff setting goals for themselves on how they want to improve themselves in their positions. So let's look at some of the opportunities that are currently available for TVR employees. These will hopefully help your staff feel motivated, supported, and provide them the updated and relevant knowledge that will help them thrive in their position and feel confident to provide TVR services. As for trainings and technical assistance, there are so many available for free right now online. The AverTech website, for one, has recordings of all the past webinars that are just like this, that cover probably hundreds of useful topics that you or your staff can look at anytime. The Avers Academy is another opportunity that is upcoming. It'll take place virtually in the spring of 2023 and in person next summer. It's going to cover all the steps of the VR process, as well as employment services and how to implement assistive technology. So those are some opportunities that are coming up that you could have your staff participate in. KNR conferences, as I'm sure most of you already know, usually occur twice a year, and they're just such a great opportunity to meet TVR staff from all across the country, attend breakout sessions on various topics, and really, I would say the networking, the sense of community, and really welcoming people into the family of TVR that spreads all over the nation and tribes everywhere is probably the best part of KNR. That's definitely was really my favorite intro to when I started in my position here at the TVR Institute, getting to know everyone and kind of developing those friendships and mentorships that you get by just meeting other people who are doing this work. State VR agencies also usually have trainings that TVR staff are welcome to attend, and that can be a great networking opportunity as well. Of course, that your staff will get the technical knowledge on VR services, but networking with state partners is a great way to improve the TVR program and the options available to your participants. So those are some non-educational methods of professional development you can offer to your staff or let them know about or participate in yourself. And Beth's now going to cover some of the educational options at various institutions.
So obviously, you know, the TVR Institute that Laura, McKenzie, and I represent offers a lot of classes. And so we have our 7 core courses plus a numerous number of kind of what we call elective courses. So the award of completion for those 7 courses, we are working diligently, and Laura is working diligently on trying to get those courses as part of a concentration area in the Northwest Indian College BA in Human Services. It's called the CARE Program in Human Services. And so we are just kind of at the last step of getting that done. So that would be a great option for those who've taken our courses to go into a BA program if that's of interest to them. The TVR Institute also has what we call an articulation agreement with Western New Mexico, who has a bachelor's degree in rehab services. And so what an articulation agreement means is that there is a pathway to substitute the courses that somebody may have taken through the TVR Institute as part of the required courses in that undergraduate degree. And then we're really hoping that at some point in the next few years that we will have a standalone bachelor's degree in tribal voc rehab services offered through Northwest Indian College. And so that's really our end goal, to really highlight the work that we do and highlight this piece of our profession within rehab counseling. And then, you know, some staff may already have a bachelor's degree, or after they get that bachelor's degree want to continue. And so there's certainly master's programs in rehab counseling. So there are a number of institutions that offer it across the country. So I am part of Western Washington University's rehab counseling program. And unfortunately, we no longer offer our program fully remotely, but there are some really good options. And so, you know, that's part of my role in the TVR Institute, is to connect people who are interested in graduate degrees with either kind of an on-the-ground, in-person degree program that might be close to you, or looking at some of our really good distance programs. So I think next slide.
Thank you, Ava. These are also some online resources that are available. Like I mentioned before, you can access these right now. You can send them to your staff right now. The AVRTech website has all the tools and webinars previously mentioned, and more than I could even talk about in the next couple of minutes. So please take a look there. The TVR Institute handbook covers the VR process entirely and is based off of our TVR Institute course curricula. It really just guides staff through the whole TVR process in a kind of general sense, but it is a hefty handbook. I know many of you have a physical copy, but the online copy is available on our website. The financial.
If I could just pause for
yeah.
a sec, I'm sorry. And what we have built in is it really is our curriculum in those first 7 courses. And so there are discussion questions related to that material. So, you know, that could be something that in a staff meeting, you might want to kind of bring up one of those discussion questions or one of the case studies that we have in there and have that kind of discussion. Jamie, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi. I've really enjoyed today's presentation. Thank you guys so much. I just wanted to add also, AverTac on our website has a standalone web page on the VR process, and it's a clickable, user-friendly guide to the VR process, and it parallels the VR process in the TVR Institute handbook. And so it's more of a live online version of the VR process and broken down to each step of the VR process, what you need to do during that step, some guidelines, some information and resources to kind of work your way through the VR process, sort of like a flow chart. So I just wanted to remind folks that that is on the AverTac web.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to continue?
Oh,
McKenzie, with
yes,
the other
I
two?
was.
Sorry. No, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you were fine. So the financial management toolkit is more targeted toward TVR program directors, but it's open to the public. Anyone can look at and benefit from it. It covers program management topics all the way from grant award notification to fiscal responsibilities, staff supervision, you know, staff leadership and self-care and all the things we've talked about today. And then the AverTac also has a YouTube channel with all the recordings of previous webinars. So that might be an easily searchable place to look at all of the wonderful webinars that they've hosted in the past. And I think Ava put all the links, all of these relevant links in the chat box. Thank you, Ava.
So thank you for participating today. These were some really great discussions. And so just our next slide is just our Q&A, but it also includes, you know, some online reference materials. If you're interested in those, we're happy to share where we got some of these ideas from. They're also embedded in the financial management toolkit. There's a piece of that, a module in that of team building and staff retention. So are there any final questions? Or comments?
Rebecca, I personally would like to really say thank you to all of the program managers and directors that are on today, because it really speaks volumes to the fact that you are concerned about your staff, you're concerned about the different things that they may be concerned about and how that's going to impact not just them staying on the job, but how they feel about what they're doing, how they feel about the team that they're a part of. And I don't think there's anyone that would argue more about just how important that is moving forward, that they know that you care. I know that for myself, when I'm working with or for someone that I think is genuinely concerned about the things I'm concerned about, then it certainly makes me want to just do that much more for them and for the program and for the consumers that I'm working with. And from those that are not here, I just want to say thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Thanks, Keith. Any other questions or final thoughts?
I want to thank you, Beth and McKenzie, for facilitating today, and we will send out an email shortly with a link to the recording and the PowerPoint so that you have all the links that are in there.